Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this week's episode of End to Growth the Prism, a live webcast where we discuss all facets of leadership and even world events and things that topics that may impact leadership as we go forward. At End to Growth, we always like to pull the future forward. We always like to advance our thinking and try to figure out what type of talent our clients are going to need next. So we're not really into backfilling a client's talent. We're very much into future filling that talent. And we've had many conversations over the last week about leadership attributes. We've talked about the crisis, going into a crisis, emerging from the crisis. Most recently, we've had conversations about resiliency and what that means to people and how they manage stress and mindfulness. This week, we want to shift a little bit to innovation as companies emerge from the crisis and they start pivoting and looking at what they have to do next to adapt. There's going to be a lot of innovation involved, but there's also the innovation pipeline or the innovation life cycle that's been happening for many, many decades, and it just continues to accelerate and continues to impact mankind on a daily basis, sometimes in a meaningful way, sometimes not so much. So if you go back to the 70s when those of us old enough remember the Walkman with the cassette tape. Well, going from the Walkman with the cassette tape to the Walkman with the CD, the compact disc, for those of you who remember compact discs, that took almost 20 years. And then once we hit 99, 2000, the iPod came out. That turned into the iTouch. That turned into the iPhone. Those other smartphones released. You now had iTunes. You had all kinds of music streaming up in the cloud. That took ten years to have that type of innovation. And recently we're talking about drones delivering packages and self-driving cars. And the pace of innovation change has become exponential. And there's a lot of debate about humankind's ability to meaningfully absorb that pace of change and whether a lot of that technology is just being driven out there for the sake of corporate P&Ls versus actually the benefit of customers and people. And so this whole concept of how do we make innovation human? How do we make it meaningful? I think is very important, particularly as companies start to look at asking their employees to innovate, what type of innovations they drive. I think there'd be a lot of innovations around saving lives with COVID and how we innovate our workspace and how we innovate restaurants and how we shop, and a lot of that's already happened. You might see people wearing customized face masks and face shields versus just the cloth masks we're wearing today, so there'll be innovation there. But we want to talk a little bit about this concept of making innovation human and how does that work and what type of obligations does corporate America have, and then um, innovative culture and what that means, and just the general impact on humankind. So, Vera, this was your topic, so why don't you kick it off for us? I may have diverged a little bit from
Definitely.
what you had in your head, so feel free to recenter it.
Right. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So Yasmin, I would say that it's completely true that today we hear a lot of discussions around the situation with around the open innovation or situations where certain jobs will be in danger because of the technological innovation and just maybe the efficiency of tech tools versus human capabilities. But essentially, in my view, innovation is human. That is to say, it's not about fighting, against machines and trying to bring some new ideas uh, which are better or worse. But it's essentially about two things. So one is about creating this open culture in a company which actually welcomes innovation, because many innovators, I think, they tend to be very introverted people, right? Because to innovate, you have to concentrate, you have to reflect a lot. So it's not a typical people networking commercial profile that is out on the market looking for new clients. And these profiles, they tend to be reserved, and they need to have this specific organization environment which would appreciate their skills. And again, here we're talking about the empathy, the willingness to adopt this change and to welcome the ideas and to give them a bit of space to show what they can do. And then there's another side, maybe which is more related to those people and companies which are not typical innovators, but they're actually driving change because they are more into strategy and commercial development and maybe finance. So these are the non-innovative profiles. Again, they need to operate in cultures which make them accept this innovation. Because I think that whenever in an organization a person sees that something new, it's a threat rather than opportunity, it's a dead case. This company will not progress because from the very beginning it closes the doors to new ideas and but essentially if we speak about the innovation as it is, it's very people driven. So it's really about identifying specific profiles that play this or that role in the innovation process and placing them in the right context, and just giving them this opportunity to again to show the best of themselves and to shine in, in given circumstances. So to conclude, it is human. It's not that it only has a human side, but it is human.
So, Vera, where would a leader start in terms of altering their culture and enabling more human innovation? Where would be a good starting point? How would they get things moving in a meaningful way?
A leader, I think that the best start is to start with yourself, right? So it's especially if we speak about the CEOs and top organizational leaders, because everything starts from the head, and it's important to make a kind of a self-reflection to understand where I as a leader stay, this transformation process, and what would be my contribution, what would be my guidance in terms of driving innovation in the company, if it's more technical, if it's more about coaching and mentoring, or just maybe overseeing and redistributing resources in a way that the right people are given the right chance to drive this process. And it's essentially about building an open and I would say almost open and like a risk-free culture, in a way that within the company people would not perceive new ideas as a risk. And I think it's very relevant, especially in situations like we're living today, right, with the COVID-19. And it's true that even we see across many companies and many of our clients and candidates that the resistance to change is higher than it used to be before, because sometimes people they tend to think that innovation it just needs to be balanced with the necessary comfort that keeps you working. So it's really about balancing between different needs. But the role of the leader is to create this culture that, regardless of the external circumstances, people would have this safety within themselves to really be able to embrace change and to challenge themselves regardless of what's happening. And again, it comes down a lot to the corporate culture.
Jim, thoughts?
Yeah, I was reflecting as Vera was talking. I think it does come down to these stomping points of leadership and culture. It really does, right? Like, there's no doubt that everybody is fearful of being replaced. And so it stifles innovation sometimes because they'd rather just keep doing their job instead of thinking about what would be the best way to do the job with a new type of technology or something like that. So you have this fear factor that's kind of subliminally back in an organization where everybody's protective, like what Vera was saying. So a leader's role is to unlock that potential, right? Just say, don't, be fearless. Think about what, the new world could be, and imagine and create that culture of, things will always change. I always use these military, I'm from a military background, and there used to be aircraft 20, 30 years ago that would require 15 people to fix it. A single aircraft, 15 people to fix it. Today it takes one person to fix it because of technology, because of advancement, because of how the computer chip within the aircraft talks to the mechanic, all of those things. You shouldn't be fearful of those kind of innovations because those other 14 jobs are reimagined into new types of jobs. And, there will always be the human connection. It's not like this is going to be a world of robots and humans just, sit on the couch. That's never going to happen. Roles will change, but you should absolutely have that innovative mindset all the time. And as a leader, you've got to create that in the culture.
So there's some interesting points there, Jim, because I could probably put up a healthy debate that from a technology standpoint, we very easily could create a world where robots do everything and we sit on the couch. Asking an Uber driver to test a self-driving car, they're eliminating their job. That's not just being change accepting. That's basically staring your job being taken away, staring it in the face. And so I think there's two elements. There's a resistance to change. A certain segment of every population are late adopters, or they want to see the technology tested before they adopt. So there's that cautiousness and just a little bit of distrust in new technology, and you want to see it proven, and you're kind of comfortable with the way things are, and things are good enough. Why should I adopt this new thing, and why should I change? There are things that enhance humanity so much that you really don't have any choice. It's not impossible, but it's almost impossible to survive today without a smart device. I know people that do it, but they are very much disconnected off the grid, and they're very much an outlier. But this concept of don't worry about your job because things are going to be reskilled and you'll have a job doing something somewhere, you're going to have a tough time convincing people that's true. If you fast forward 10 years and robots are the waiters at McDonald's and some restaurants and things like that, and you're eliminating those type of people, where's the reskilling going to come from? I don't see an active program now that actually reskill people. And actually, the McDonald's now, there are some self-service McDonald's when you walk in. They don't even use cashiers anymore.
Yep. But I think that's almost like a separate topic in itself that we could talk about is how are we preparing to reskill the next generation of workforce? Because that's the discussion. You can't stop innovation. You can't stop technology. Your CD to MP3 player examples and all those things. Technology is going to continue to march on. There's no doubt about it. And so we have to look. So you've got to look from a leadership perspective, like what are the skill sets that when you were talking about future filling, what are the skill sets that your future leaders are going to possess, and are they thinking in those terms? And are the business schools of today or the technical colleges of today set up to start to reskill these people? Because absolutely, right? We will be 10 years from now without a human more than likely inside McDonald's or very limited in all of that. So we've got to start facing that now. And I think today's leaders have to start thinking about that now, without a doubt.
I'm looking at the intersection of enabling innovation in a meaningful way so that when you talk to your people as a leader and you talk about these opportunities, the opportunities are something that your people can embrace. And right now, change relative to what it was in the 90s and even the first decade of the 2000s is exponential.
Yeah.
It's almost moving vertically. So we talked about resilience and your ability to handle things and handle high pressure situations. Managing change now, managing innovation in a world where technology is exponential can be overwhelming. So as you're a leader enabling your team, do you potentially overwhelm them with opportunity? And then you get back to the moral obligation. Is the technology you're driving actually meaningful for society? Is it meaningful for your customer? Or are you just going to push it out and sell it for the sake of a P&L? So there's a lot of aspects here that are very, very interesting. Yeah. And we talk about leaders needing authenticity, being genuine. You're leading in a virtual world now. You're rarely able to meet your team face to face. And you've got to convince them that this technology or these innovations and these opportunities that you're asking them to go chase and you're going to enable them to go chase, it's got to be something that they want to own, that they're going to feel good about. People, work teams now, software developers, product developers, etc., they do not like developing things that they don't feel has a genuine purpose that's going to help people, that's going to help society. So there's a little bit of a tipping point coming here in the way that innovation is introduced and the way it's actually happening, I think.
And there's a lot of offshoots to that too. I'll give you a great example. This week's podcast, the Iron Sharpens Iron movement. There's your plug, the Iron Sharpens Iron movement. This week is with Andy Wilson. And Andy Wilson is an innovator, he's a venture capitalist, and he's also a councilman on the Pasadena, California City Council. And this is a tie into technology and about how a certain technology was set up one way, but how you can use it for other ways. And it's back to your Uber example. So as a city councilman, he sits there and he watches in Pasadena, they're buying all of these big buses, right? They're buying public transportation buses. And they also have a whole bunch of the rideshare vans. And so he's watching these buses at 2 at night drive around the city on the 24-hour route completely empty, right? And they're just driving around empty, 1 or 2 passengers, anything like that. You're also seeing these 15-passenger vans have this 5-day wait on reserving for an elderly person to go to the hospital, right? And the average route is only 2 miles from the elderly person's home to the hospital, just 2 miles. And you have to wait 5 days to schedule it out. He was like, why don't we get rid of all of that and just use Uber? Just use immediate rideshare things and have like little credit sheets, have a special credit card or whatever. Why are we driving empty buses around? If we need somebody, they can go to a particular place. You call the Uber, they come, they pick you up. You're employing an Uber driver. You're employing that technology. You're saving millions of dollars in taxpayer money, all because of this technology now can be shifted for use in government too. And he's got a really good argument about that. And there's more about that on the podcast, but I think it's just a decent example of how we've got to continue to embrace technology. It can be used for many different ways, and we just have to be as a society in the mindset of accepting these things.
And that's a great example of where technology does help society.
Yeah.
The way that's being applied, it not only helps make helps the budget of the city of Pasadena, but it definitely is going to make the rides more efficient. They'll be quicker. They're point to point, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an awesome example of doing it the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Vera,
it's very
what else?
aligned,
We've been hogging the conversation here, so feel free to tell us to knock it off so you can jump in.
No worries. No, but what you say, it's very aligned, I think, also with, the needs and aspirations of the new generation of future leaders, right? The future leaders in 10, 15 years, because now if you talk to a recent university graduate or someone in his early 20s, they're all very tech savvy. So from the point of view of understanding the agility of the technology, I think that they manage it quite well. But most of them, when you ask a question, what kind of a job are you looking for? So they are looking for meaningful jobs, meaning that I think this necessity to change organizational structures, to readapt them, or to reskill existing senior leaders, I think that again, like it exists with and without this technological disruption. The question is, what comes first? Whether it's the technological disruption which shapes, these aspirations of future leaders, or it's just the evolutionary process in the society which comes first, and then you have the technological advance on top of it. But it's definitely the case. And for example, in Europe, in certain economies that are distinguished now as like the most advanced and vibrant startup ecosystems, like the UK or France is also catching up in this respect, and they're investing a lot in new projects and innovation. You speak to VCs and you see that I think that 60-70% of venture capitalists, they are looking for this side of impact investment, responsible investment, social responsibility, and even the term ECG. I think that it appeared, within the investment industry just maybe less than 10 years ago. So it's definitely a very important move, and I wouldn't say that it goes in conflict again with technological advances, but it really makes you think in a very holistic manner, where you have to align, the speed and agility and efficiency with the impact this technology is making on human, on the society, on the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it's interesting. Vera and I were in Morocco last year together, and we were conducting a leadership forum, and it was on the fourth industrial revolution and where are we going and all of that, and almost to a person, they came back and said, always remember the human dynamic. It's always going to come down to tying humans into whatever you're doing. And I have found that, especially speaking to leaders over the last year or 2 years, it's still connected to the human. So everything that we talk about still got to draw that human dynamic about how are we dealing with humanity? How is the human element tied into these kind of things? It's just a really interesting concept that we can advance technology as long as we want it, but it's still got to have that tail connection to the human.
Yes, it's almost like a facilitator, of human-driven processes. That it's great, to have this back office part organized, and to have the technological part of your work in place, so that you can be more creative and more innovative to drive the progress and to think about new things. But that experience and that meetings during the forum, they were extremely important, because you hear this conversation in every part of the world, regardless of whether you are in a developed country, in Europe, in the US, and in the developing economy. It really resonates, in different languages and across different countries.
Yeah, so that all great points. I feel Jim's underlying enthusiasm for innovation and how it enables things, which is cool. And I consider myself a technology guy. I love technology. I worked in technology for 30 years plus. But at the same time, being in my 50s now, I start to look at things that are happening, and you just shake your head a little bit. And I look at the data scraping that's going on today, and the fact that I can text one of my friends in Florida and say, hey, did you see, we're both photographers, and say, hey, did you see the ad for this camera that's on sale? Within 30 seconds, that camera ad is popping up on his Facebook feed.
Yeah.
I can literally be verbally talking to my wife about something we haven't bought in a while, could be something at a pharmacy or whatever, and that shows up on my Facebook feed. My wife purchased these high-end gourmet kitchen knives for cutting vegetables and stuff, these super sharp knives. She purchased 3 of these knives online. I start getting ads for knives to buy these gourmet kitchen knives. So stuff like that bothers me. It really does. I feel like everything I'm doing is being watched. Like I said, I'm a photographer. If I put photos in the cloud, if I put my photos up on Google Photo as a backup, they look at them and they alter them and send them back to me and say, we think this looks better. I didn't ask for that.
But you did. But you did. That's the trade-off, right? That's the concentrate. You can go off the grid and live a life to where someone's not monitoring you. But if you want to have the ability to, within 30 seconds, order those knives and have them delivered magically to your home through a whole process, it's the trade-off. And that's the scariest thing about it. You're doing it's a contract. You want the ease of one button ordering, you got it, but it comes with the trade-off.
So that's the point. You don't have a choice. If you want to be on the grid, you've got to sign up for being monitored.
Yeah.
Now, I did go in and I turned off. Facebook has this thing where you can turn off non-Facebook stuff. But a lot of people don't realize that unless you go in and uncheck that box, Facebook looks at every other thing you do online, not just Facebook. They look at every website you visit. They look at your text. If you don't uncheck that box, by default, that box is on. And if you don't uncheck it, they look at everything. Once you uncheck it, they only can look at Facebook and Facebook Messenger. But I want that opt-out. I want to be able to say, I want to use the internet without people monitoring my personal life. Yep. And when Alexis and Siri listen to everything you do, when you say, "Hey, we need laundry detergent," and laundry detergent pops up on your feed,
Yep.
that to me, it's not. It might be comfortable for a 20 and 30-year-old. It's not comfortable for me. I don't like it.
So true. So
It's
true.
true. But the worst was because it happens when you share it, with someone or just mention it. But I had situations when I was thinking about something without sharing it with anyone, and it was appearing in a feed. So I don't know, maybe it was a coincidence, but that was the moment when I actually got scared. It's not that they're watching you, but in a way they're reading your thoughts and
Yeah, but you look at
anticipating your
corporations
needs.
now.
Yes.
Facebook can do this so easily now. There's even applications that take advantage. So here, I saw a live demonstration of this particular application. It was done by somebody at a big university in Massachusetts. But that application could go out and look at every tweet in the world, but we just focused on the United States. So it collects tweets in the United States in real time. It assigns an emotional quotient to those tweets. And then it does a geographic dispersion. So if something bad happens or something good happens in Atlanta, it can measure the emotional state of the people in Atlanta, and it can tailor what it offers them on Amazon or what everything else based on their emotional state. They
Yep.
know that if somebody is feeling sad because of something, they're more likely to buy these 100 items. Or if somebody's feeling really happy because of something, they're more likely to buy these 500 items. And they can feed that information to Amazon, and Amazon can tailor their advertising based on people's emotions around the United States. Now, once again, is that a good thing? It's a good thing for Amazon, but is that an invasion of privacy? Some people would say, well, you're the one putting the post on Twitter. It's public information, so it's not, it's not an invasion of privacy. But there's some things that go on in this world that are really technology-wise fascinating, but to me, they create these moral dilemmas from a leadership standpoint and a corporate America standpoint.
Yeah, if from a military perspective, a lot of that is used also where each person's a sensor now, right? That's what we call them. Like that all of that data is a sensor, and then you're utilizing that data to form whatever picture you want, just like the example that you gave. So it's interesting, but you can use for innovation and technology and in the workplace and all that stuff. I just think there are some good uses that could be added. I was sitting here just imagine as you were talking. I've got this wireless mouse, right? And I put my finger on it to control my computer every day. Why isn't that not taking my pulse and my temperature? And now that data can be fed in. What is my potential risk that I have COVID, or what is my emotional feelings today? And all right, you can use all of this sensory things for good and bad. That's the problem. Everything that you can create can be for good or bad, right? A gun was created to help hunt more efficiently, but it can be used for bad too, right? So it's
Yep.
it's all of it.
So
Absolutely.
It's all of
what
it.
you just talked about, all the telemetry on health, if you become a human sensor and you're providing wellness telemetry,
Yep.
then healthcare providers can in real time alter your premiums. Like,
Yeah.
your
Great
cholesterol,
point.
your cholesterol went up, this went up, this went up. Your healthcare premiums just doubled. I
Yeah.
know that doesn't apply as much in a lot of Europe with socialized medicine, Vera, but in the United States, it can be used for healthcare providers to drive costs, drive expenses up.
Right.
I know now we use questionnaires and stuff to do the same thing, and big corporations put out health questionnaires, and then their insurance premiums for healthcare are based on the results of those questionnaires. But if they start collecting real telemetry off of their employees, the numbers may change. An employer can start doing an emotional state of their employees based on emails and texts and things like that. And if a leader's sitting there and saying, hey, I got Joe and Sally working for me, and they come into work and they're angry every day, is that good data or bad data? Well, it's probably good data in a way, but is it an invasion of privacy again? So there's a lot of interesting aspects to this where technology now has come to the point where transparent, 100%, 1000% transparency is possible, either at work or at home or in retail. People can measure your emotional state, they can measure your habits, they can measure your location, they can tell how far you walk every day, they can tell where you drive, they can tell your favorite restaurant to go eat at. It's like you're a mouse in a maze being monitored.
Yeah.
It's really, to me, it's unsettling. I know a lot of people don't even think about it, but it's very unsettling to me to think that everything I do is monitored, and I am that human sensor, and corporations and the government are allowed to use that in any way they choose is fit.
Yep. It's an interesting dynamic. When we first were talking about to live stream this topic, one of my very first thoughts was using a lot of these wearable technologies to sense the health of where you're at. To be a leader and to be able to come in and see that half my workforce didn't get good sleep last night. To see that there's a certain stress level. To see that's information that I think from my ignorant leadership perspective would say I could use it for good, right? I would use it for good if I realized that half the team didn't sleep well last night, and how I would react to that and all of those things. But there's just two sides of every single coin on what you would do with it.
One of those people that didn't sleep last night might get kind of grouchy and aggressive if they don't get enough sleep. So you send them to go talk to somebody to get the job done because, they're going to go in there and butt heads and not be passive about it. So yeah, you can use it obviously, but it like I said, from a technology standpoint, I appreciate it. The way some of it's being used is unsettling to me. I think Facebook has become, and they're probably monitoring this as we're talking.
Yeah.
I just think Facebook has become, it's taken on a life of its own, and the way it collects and uses data now, it's doing it in ways that people don't even realize. And I doubt if you did a poll, even half the people in this world know that box is checked that I talked about that lets Facebook automatically look at everything else you do when you're online unless you uncheck that box. And by the way, finding that box is not easy. I probably couldn't tell you off the top of my Facebook and go hunt it down. It took me a while to find it. It's buried to uncheck it. So there's some things happening that I'm not quite sure I would agree with as a leader, but also as a leader, like you said, you want as much information on your employees as possible, and if you could find out autonomously that the stress of a big project had them overworking, under eating, under sleeping, and undernourished, and their performance was degrading as a result of that, and you could kind of do something about it. That's goodness, I guess. I still might be a little bit annoyed that my boss has that type of information about me, but it's goodness.
Yeah.
But there's the technology for technology's sake. There's using technology to feed corporate P&Ls, and there's using technology to augment humanity. And it's the third one that I'm interested in, the augmentation of humanity. The other two kind of disturb me a little bit.
Yeah, it's extremely important, especially in our business, because essentially we are in a human business, and you see how again the technological disruption is changing the HR management, right? Because I think it was a report very recently that HR technology it's actually one of the preferred areas for venture capital investors, and again it's great because it allows you to understand to better understand your team dynamics, to better understand personalities of each specific candidate employee, to really find this tailored approach to each one, and to unlock their creativity or innovation, or just some skills that they wouldn't share, because in traditional cultures, or like even 20 years ago, I think that the fact of sharing your, personal life or personal ambition in a workplace was almost seen as a weakness. Like, for example, even for me, and I was coming from a more reserved country. When I went to Spain, I was working there during my first years. So it was almost like a cultural shock, the fact that you come to a workplace and you share other things which happen to you outside the work environment. So now I think that with the technological advances, with the increase in interest and personalities, this human side is extremely important. But the question, as Jim said, is how you use it, for the good of the organization without really making this excessive intervention and into a personal space of each one. And it's also cultural because here in Europe, for example, I had a case like when there was a Spanish client interviewing a German candidate, and the conversation, the chit chat was too personal at the beginning, and the candidate was quite junior. So the first question was, when they called us for the feedback, it's like, yes, it was good, but I think there were too many personal questions. I'm like, no, it's cultural, and
Yeah.
I think it's exciting at the same time, but of course, as a leader, one has to be very careful because, again, like you cannot find this one size fits all approach, and you also need to leave some space for your employees, to decide for themselves, to reflect also on how their personal ambition fits in a specific organizational culture. But there should be this transparent exchange of visions and perceptions to make sure that there is no negative impact of the technology, because the initial idea, I think that it was to create something good which would improve the effectiveness or the transparency of the industry. But as you said, Jim, there are always two sides of a coin. So
That's
depends
great.
how you manage it.
And we talked about that last week a little bit, how the priority stack has changed for leaders, and things like empathy are now at the top of the stack, and that subject matter expertise and getting hired because you were good at a certain thing isn't quite as at the top anymore, because you got to have the complete package. You got to have empathy. You got to have all the other leadership skills required, and there's new things now that are required in terms of having a cultural fit versus just coming in and being good at a subject. So all of that leads into how people are interviewed. There will be more personal type questions because people want to figure out a cultural fit. Talking to a client last week, and at the very end of the conversation, he said, our biggest concern is culture fit. He said, we have a very casual style here. We wear t-shirts and jeans to work, and you can put your feet up on your desk, and we want people to feel very comfortable, and you got to be able to joke around a little bit with each other and laugh. We don't like the workplace to be too serious, and so we need people that fit that culture. That's very, very important to us. So you can't find out if somebody likes to joke around unless you find out in an interview if they like to joke around. And you can't find out if they, like to wear suits to work every day, or if they're comfortable in jeans and t-shirt and flip-flops, unless you ask. So I think the questions are going to become a lot more personal as we move forward, and the workplace changes, and even the virtual workplace changes. I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to manage the energy of an organization virtually. You can say all the right things on this screen and on Zoom calls and things like that, but it's very, very hard to convey that energy you get when you walk into a room, and that whole room just gets energized by what's happening and exchange of ideas and things like that. It's really hard to build that momentum virtually. So I think you're going to see new leadership styles emerge with people that are really good with screen presence. Now, you talk about people owning the room as an executive. They're going to have to own the screen now. They're going to have screen presence as well as executive presence. It's really going to shift, and innovation is going to come in that space too.
I think that's a fantastic point. I will tell you also, when Vera was talking, I think something that's going to be really relevant is to have true cultural understanding. So not the culture of the organization, but your global perspective has got to be just so hypersensitive now, because a Spanish culture is absolutely different than a German culture.
Oh, absolutely.
And if we're in this virtual environment, if we have an international organization that's in a Zoom room and you're talking about having this presence on the screen, you got to be hyper aware, situationally aware of the cultural dynamics dependent on where your global organization is located, is sitting. It's going to be interesting. You're going to be juggling a lot of different balls all at the same time, because you could just be completely relaxed if you were in the Spanish boardroom compared to how you're going to handle yourself in the German boardroom.
No, a friend of mine this morning, were discussing some of the challenges now with gender identifications and people being, non-gender specific, and I can't even keep up with the terminology anymore, and what words are appropriate and not appropriate, and what can you use and what can't you use, and um, even race is being using some different terms, and the verbiage keeps changing, and so it's hard to keep up with that. So I think that is an obligation of a leader, and if you're going to talk about opportunities, those opportunities have to be multicultural, multi-generational, multi-gender. You got to be able to cross all of those lines if you want to engage your entire workforce and energize them and enable innovation. You've got to be able to touch everything. It's a big challenge.
Yeah, big time.
All right.
But that's reality, right? That's
It
reality.
is.
That's today's challenge.
Yep, I think we've done a good job with that topic. So Jim, let's play leadership roulette for a few minutes. Let's just end it with a few fun things here for the next 3 or 4 minutes.
All right, who's gonna be the lucky customer?
Well, Joe's not here, so we can't hand it to him. So Vera, you can have the first one.
Okay,
I'll take the
let's
second
go.
one.
All right, just say whenever.
Stop.
All right, start small. Choose one area from your list and take a step of discipline in that direction today. Starting small. So, what are your
Right.
thoughts on, how do you attack a very large task, I guess?
Right. I mean, this topic again, I think it can be arguable depending on the context, but I think it's pretty much the same situation that we have for all the statements with this game, because it just makes you think about specific situations and apply it, for example, to a huge project, right? To get in an organization and you don't know where to start, and you have your virtual team, which is based in all different countries, so it's very hard to organize this team dynamics, and your assistant, she's working in the home office. So it's I would say that it's not that you start small, because prior to starting small and picking a task, you really have to maybe look, and again, it's my own perception, so you have to look at it from I would say from the top. You have to have this global vision, because this global vision allows you to prioritize and to pick up this one or two tasks that you have to concentrate on. So I think if it's applied to a big project, you start small, but you start with the right task. Then, if we speak, for example, about the professional development, about the career growth, and more like being a mentor and giving an advice to a future executive, young graduate who doesn't know where to start from, because the world is getting very complex, and he can't really identify himself with a specific text. So there, I would say yes, it makes sense to just encourage him to start small, to start with something, to learn from the very bottom, and it's actually experience which eventually guides you to the right path, because sometimes again, when we speak about leadership, when we speak about the changing words, I think that for many young professionals, it can be a little bit frustrating, because they imagine themselves in their heads and in the shoes of a manager, but they understand that it's still a long way to go. So where to start from, and start from the opportunity which comes to you, because it always comes to you, even if you don't think about it, or if you don't notice that this is around. So I think that it's also somehow related to the whole concept again of the empathy, of humility, and
No, it's interesting. I understand the
So-
statement, and I understand Vera's view on it. My leadership style is the opposite. I believe in starting big and rapid, radical, revolutionary change, and you challenge teams really early. And the starting small, if I was going to use that as a philosophy, I would probably just say get a couple of quick wins. So you grab the small stuff and get a couple quick wins early. But I hit the teams with the big bang and big, hairy, challenging goal, and get them all ramped up and excited, and get them running full speed as fast as possible. So I think it's a style thing, and I think some companies would run very effectively with a start small theory, depending on what their culture was like, and whether they were change accepting or change fighting. But if you have a change in fighting culture, I hit it hard and fast and go big.
I took that away as how do you eat an elephant? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I think that's what they were referring to more than anything else.
Elephant, you can't eat an elephant. They're beautiful animals and very, very caring.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
All right, Jim, my turn.
All right, here we go. Last one of the day.
All right, stop.
Ooh. Oh, that doesn't count. I stopped on my little thing here. We gotta do it
All
again.
right. Stop.
All right. Teachability. If you're not, I think we've already done that one.
We've
Yep.
done this one.
All right, so let's see the next page then. Disconnect with the status quo.
I think that's a key to innovation. If you're just looking at status quo, whether it's hiring talent or developing products, you're going to die quickly, and you want to get away from that. In a lot of cases, you don't even want to listen to your existing customers. You want to try to find customers, future customers you don't have that pulling the future forward again. And here's some new ideas, and here's some needs of people you're not serving today, and try to create that new product or new service based on things you don't know today. So I think that's incredibly appropriate, disconnected from the status quo, especially if we're talking about innovation like we are today.
Yeah, it's very well aligned to the topic. Good way to finish.
Does anybody know the translation of status quo? Does anybody know the?
No.
I don't either, but it'd be interesting to know what it literally means. Because I think we have it all in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, I take it as the current state, the current way of doing things. But
Yeah. Interesting.
all right,
Great episode this week.
it is great conversation. I love talking about innovation, and I'm always interested in talking about some of the moral dilemmas companies have as they take advantage of opportunities and whether they're taking too much advantage. And as we said, and there's a lot of good things you can do with technology and innovation, but you can also use them for some not so good things. So companies need to keep their moral compass and things like that to keep things moving in the right direction. So
You bet.
Joe should be back next week. We'll get a full table again, and we're trying to line up some guest speakers for future episodes. I hope you also join us on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where we have other End of Growth employees running live webcasts. On Tuesday, we have the elephant in the room, and on Thursday, we have the director's chair, both at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thank you for joining us today. It was great having you and great conversation. Thank you.